I'm going to tell you how I'm using ChatGPT to win my fantasy football leagues this year is probably not how you think. You see, the simplest way to use ChatGPT to help with fantasy football would be to just say, draft for me, or tell me who to pick. But that honestly is not going to work against someone like me who really knows fantasy football well. I mean, I've been playing it for over 20 years. I've won over 30 leagues. I win about 40 to 50% of the leagues that I'm in overall, I'd say. I'm going to first divulge a very important philosophy for ranking fantasy football players and picking who's going to break out any given year. Then I'm going to talk about how ChatGPT or any AI service basically can really amplify your ability to rank players and get valuable insights for the upcoming season. First, I'm going to explain something simple but powerful, which is that the number of fantasy football points a player will score in the whole course of a season is the product of the number of opportunities they get by the number of fantasy points they get per opportunity. People naturally tend to gravitate towards the latter, which is the number of points they get per opportunity, which is sort of like the player's overall skill level. I care a lot more about the potential opportunities they'll get. My philosophy is that any player who's athletic enough to make it to the NFL has the ability to succeed in a successful scheme. There's also a big swing in the number of opportunities that a player gets based on whether their team is leading or trailing. If a team is leading, generally they want to run out the clock, run the ball more. And if they're trailing, then they're going to want to pass more. You know, that garbage time counts big time in fantasy football. I also think that people tend to underrate the effect that a scheme has and that an offensive line has. Additionally, some offensive coordinators, coaches like to have a faster pace than others, and that makes a big difference in the number of opportunities that any given player gets. So anyways, what I'm having ChatGPT do this year is composite rankings of things like the offensive line and the expected number of plays for each team. People talk about prompt engineering with AI, but really it's about context engineering, meaning I want to make sure that it has proper up-to-date context on which transactions have affected NFL rosters this offseason, what the upcoming schedule is. Then I list a couple trusted sources like Pro Football Focus. Look at that, and I say, make a list of ranking all the teams in terms of their offensive line strength. I make sure it knows up-to-date offensive coordinators and head coaches, and I ask it to, based on their tendencies, predict how many plays each team is going to run. And I also cross-check this with the schedule because based on the opponent, a team will run more or less plays. With this data, I already have a pretty strong sense of which teams are going to outperform expectations and which teams are likely to underperform expectations based on the surrounding contextual factors. Would have taken me a ton of time to do without AI, but AI really speeds this up. But yeah, that's the basic of it. I provide a lot of context to the AI and then ask it specific questions to get background information to help my rankings, knowing which players have a likely chance to break out, etc. Let me know if you want to know who those specific players are. Are there any fantasy football players among my fans? I've never made a video on fantasy sports before, but again, I've won a lot of fantasy sports leagues. Anyone who knows me knows how obsessed I am about this stuff, and I want to share some of those insights with you guys if you're interested. So anyways, stay learning. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. 98.7% of you watching this are not subscribed. I value your time. I won't waste it. You'll get a little smarter, learn a thing or two about AI. So hit the button. Check it out. Thanks.